A recent announcement makes it clear that the PlayStation Live service games are here and seemingly out of nowhere. In the aftermath of The Last of Us Online being canceled, many question if the plan for live service games would be going forward. Well, a surprise announcement about the Foamstarz release date had me look at the calendar, and a game that I wasn't even aware of that has some live service structure to it made me say the PlayStation Live service push is starting a lot faster than I thought that it would. Now, this doesn't mean that these games will be successful, but it certainly picks up the pace after a lot of questions and doubt. So the three games I want to talk about and look at with you are Granblue Fantasy Relink, Foamstarz, and Helldivers 2. Now, some may push back and claim that Granblue is not a live service game, but my research is pointing towards a model that should make some players happy and others may be a little concerned. I've been saying that there are two approaches to live service games, the player funnel model and the content-driven model. And the player funnel model is the one that seems to get the most criticism. It's prone to utilizing FOMO, which means fear of missing out. They want you to fear that you're going to miss out on things, so they utilize things like dailies, weeklies, sign-in bonuses, battle passes, limited time events, and more. Well, what if live service games started launching where they allow you and they're designed for you to take breaks, to take time away from the game? That's sort of expected. Some might say, well, that just sounds like the classic DLC approach. Well, yes and no, especially when a game has multiplayer or co-op or online components. Now, the reason I say this is Granblue Fantasy Relink fits this bill, even though they claim this is not a live service game. According to Destructoid.com, Granblue Fantasy Relink General Director said to RPG site that, quote, "The game is not a live service game. As far as dailies and weeklies are concerned, there's not really anything like that in the game." Now, again, you got to read that in context. He's not saying that there's no live service elements. He's saying it's not a live service game as far as dailies and weeklies are concerned. So I want to push back and say that's not the only thing that defines a live service game. If there's going to be ongoing content planned, if there's multiplayer, if you have planned content that is also then structured with monetization baked in, that's very much a live service game. And they've said very little about monetization. That also doesn't mean that every game that has DLC is live service. The director went on to say this as well. He says, there's not any sort of system set up where you're going to really hurt yourself by missing days of play. There will also be no battle passes, and you can play Granblue Fantasy Relink offline like any classic RPG. So that is the news I think is going to be welcome to many players. You can play it offline, no battle passes, none of the tropes that are sort of known in the player funnel model where you got to keep the player funnel full, so you're utilizing all these pieces of manipulation to keep people in the game. So fans will likely celebrate this fact that it can be played offline and that there is no battle pass, but many have pointed out that the game has sort of a Genshin Impact vibes, like it kind of feels like that game. And that's related both to the art style and the gameplay, but also to their ongoing content model. They have already indicated that even though the game launches on February the 1st, they already have 2 characters planned to drop in April. Now, this reminds me of conversations I've had about Kill the Justice League, right? You add a new character, you get people to come back, and I'm sure then you have some optional monetization practices. Now, with respect to their microtransactions, it's actually tough to get a straight answer. I couldn't find anything, and they say, oh, it's not a live service game, there's no dailies and weeklies, but you unlock new characters with the currency earned in the game. Well, if that currency becomes choked or throttled, I'm sure they'll be happy to sell you that currency when that amazing new character drops. The few videos I've watched on this game indicate that they're going to answer questions about microtransactions at a later date. That gives me a little bit of pause. I think it's clear that there are live service game aspects here, but there are also other aspects that are not here. Ongoing content and monetization that have yet to be even scoped out and described, that may be cause for concern. But the game has a lot of interested players, and the demo received a lot of great feedback and praise. So I think we can chalk this up as a live service game, even if it's sort of in the more lighter funnel of, hey, we're just going to add characters ongoing. But I would be on guard for this game choking out the currency to sort of motivate you to spend money to get a new character. Now, the next game is the one that surprised me. We knew that Foamstarz was coming in 2024, but I did not expect it to drop 2 days prior to Helldivers 2. On January the 16th, they dropped a trailer that announced Foamstarz would be landing on PS Plus on February the 6th. Now, keep in mind, Helldivers is February the 8th, so we're going to have 3 live service games landing in the first 8 days of February. Now, again, none of this means they'll be successful, but the first thing I want to talk about is with respect to Foamstarz, okay? In my opinion, this could be the sleeper hit of 2024. Everyone has been very quick to dismiss this game, but every preview has basically said the same thing. It was surprisingly fun. It is a surprise hit. It is a surprisingly good time. Now, many have compared this game to Splatoon, and the producer hopes people realize it is a very different game. In a VGC article, he said, "There have been many comparisons on the internet, but also we saw on social media that the people who actually played it saw that it's a completely different game, and I hope you also agree." And VGC reiterates that after their time with the preview, quote, "We came away pleasantly surprised by its original ideas and irresistible presentation." So I think people are just so quick to be like, it's a Splatoon ripoff, this game looks lame, this game looks dumb. I would not write this game off. This is the exact type of game that can suddenly have a groundswell of interest and a ton of people playing it, and I do think it also appeals to people who may be of a younger persuasion, or also just you have to consider art style and game type being a huge hit even outside of the Western market. So I would not write off Foamstarz. Now, the other element of this announcement that I thought was interesting was that this game is coming to PS Plus. I'll be honest, this feels like a bit of a half measure. Games like this may struggle to get their player funnel full because it kind of looks like a game perfect for free to play. It's possible that PlayStation researched it and they think that the PS Plus funnel is big enough to generate momentum, and maybe that leads to people, if you're not on PS Plus, maybe you sign up because you want to play the game, or you can just buy the game for $29.99. That's what I'm seeing when I research the price. It's currently not in the PlayStation Store with this price. It's just listed there, but everywhere I look said it's going to be $29.99. Again, I think people are writing this game off too fast, saying, well, no one was going to pay $70 for it, and that's why they had to put it on PS Plus. Well, for $29.99, I think people will rally around a game like this with charming characters and bright colors and what looks like a very fun gameplay loop. Everybody that played this game at the preview all walked away saying the same thing. They did not expect to like it. They were surprised by how much they liked it. They wanted to keep playing. So I do think this has the potential to be a big hit. That doesn't mean it will be, okay? I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm just saying there's potential here. Don't just dismiss this as some Splatoon ripoff. Now, the last game to look at is Helldivers 2, okay? Now, the same day that Foamstarz announced that it would be coming to PS Plus, Helldivers dropped their own official launch trailer, and it's entitled The Fight for Freedom Begins. Now, I like how this game is not taking itself too seriously. If you've watched any of these trailers, there's a goofiness, there's a silliness, there's sort of a tongue-in-cheek to it. You get almost like a 90s movie vibe, Starship Troopers vibe, and I love that. I love that they're not taking themselves too seriously. Now, the thing that I continue to notice is that this game graphically is a lot stronger than I expect from a game like this. The trailers, at the beginning, if you saw down there in the small print, they say that it's a mix of CG and gameplay captured on a PS5. So it doesn't seem to be some souped up PC trailer. It's gameplay from the PS5. And because of that, I was kind of surprised at the lighting, the explosions, and just the way the game feels. Usually when you're playing a game like this, it doesn't look that good. They have to dumb down all of the graphics to get it to work well, to run well. There's a lot going on, and you're playing online with other people. Not only that, when you look at the graphics, the different biomes, and the different settings, I just think this game looks fun. It's just nice to have a knock-around co-op game where the objective is very simple. Kill aliens. Big explosions, big guns, big weapons. Now, I will say this. I actually think the game looks like it may be a bit more challenging than people are expected. I see a lot of player death in the trailer, and that may work against the casual player base that I imagine is going to be drawn to a game like this. If you go to boot up with your buddies and everybody's dying and you keep failing, well, that's not going to really draw you back in. You're not going to want to keep playing. I'm also curious about their plans for ongoing content. As far as I can tell, this is meant to be an ongoing game. Will they add new planets, missions, weapons? The previous game had additive content in that vein, so it's safe to assume that this one will as well. But I really think the big question I had was, and this is what spurred me to talk about this, why launch Foamstarz right before Helldivers? Doesn't that seem like you're kind of stepping on each other's toes, right? That doesn't seem like a good idea. Now, I've seen some different opinions on this. One is that, well, Foamstarz isn't going to be very good, so they're just going to throw it on PS Plus. They're going to get it out of the way. It's sort of sandwiched between Granblue and Helldivers 2, so they don't want any attention drawn to the game. I saw that opinion thrown out on Twitter. Now, I don't find that argument compelling. I don't think you put a game that you think is going to be bad on your subservice. That's not a good look, and it's certainly not a good strategy. I find the second theory to be more compelling. All of these games are very different. I would imagine the bros that sort of decide, hey, let's boot up and play some Helldivers 2 on launch date, right? I would imagine that those guys are not looking to play Foamstarz. And same with Granblue, the people that are going to play Granblue Fantasy Relink. I don't know if they're going to be super interested in Foamstarz or Helldivers 2. Now, they do appeal, I think, to different subsets of the market, which could be a winning strategy. PlayStation basically said, hey, you want live service? Here's 3 different genres and even different approaches to content flow. Because Granblue is not, as far as we can tell, a traditional live service game. It looks like it's going to do more of the character-driven model, which is we're going to launch new characters. That's going to get you to come back, and if you're engaged, you're going to be willing to spend money. Again, be on guard with the potential for them to sort of choke out the currency, so you're motivated to spend money for all the wrong reasons. Now, I think the real challenge is for those of us that are actually interested in all 3 games to varying degrees. The more I look at Granblue, I'm actually surprised that I'm interested. Because I initially was like, oh, that's not really kind of my kind of game. And then the more I've looked at it, I'm like, oh, I might be able to play that with my wife. That could be really fun. And then I'm looking at, Kill the Justice League. Might play that with my wife. That could be pretty fun. What about Helldivers 2? What about Foamstarz? Okay? Those of us that have varying degrees of interest in these games, they're all landing right on top of each other. It's going to be hard, I think, to give them the attention needed to really kick the tires, if that makes sense. Usually with a game like this, you've got to kind of put in the time, level up, get into a flow before you can really determine whether or not you like it. Because they are very different. There are tons of missions and tons of content in Granblue. A long tail RPG as far as I can tell. Then Foamstarz is basically you playing against other people in a more stripped down 4v4 online sort of party style game. And then Helldivers is knock around with your buddies, shoot some aliens. They're all very, very different, which again, that could be a brilliant strategy. There's no question that a lot of different consumers are going to have a lot of different options within just 8 days of February to try out very, very different games. And that's before we even really get into how well Last of Us Part 2 Remastered did. What about Rise of the Ronin? As well as any other titles that are coming this year like Stellar Blade. So as far as the PlayStation Live service push, like in a few short weeks, well, the live service games begin with PlayStation. It's not to say they don't already have some, like games like Gran Turismo and others, but this seems to be the initial push. The question is, will they last, or will they fizzle out like so many others? That's always the question in everybody's mind. When it comes to live service games, it's like they're a dime a dozen. There's too many of them. They do FOMO. They do battle passes. Well, it seems like these games are all approaching very different, not just genres, but also different approaches for content. So we'll have to wait and see how they plan to support Foamstarz ongoing, as well as Helldivers 2, as it seems right now we have very little information on how they're going to support those games ongoing. And Granblue doesn't really go into detail about the monetization, just that there'll be new characters arriving in April after the game comes out in February. I actually think all of these games have potential in their own way, and I really do think they might surprise some folks, but that's just what I think. I would love to know what you think. Feel free to leave a comment below. If you are a member at the $6 tier or higher, you can roll over into what we call the Writer's Room. We plan out these uploads and my live streams. You can be a part of that planning process. It's sort of a behind-the-scenes look at what we do here, and it supports the channel directly. If you're not going to do that, that's totally fine. It supports the channel to hit like. It also supports the channel if you hit subscribe and the bell button, so I can see you in the next video.